I've been using Sculptra for over 10 years to not only treat patients, but I use it on myself. Sculptra is one of my favorite injectable treatments, and it was a game changer for me because it does something very different. It's a biostimulator, and not only does it help your skin to produce more collagen, but it also changes the quality of your skin, and it's becoming more and more popular. So I want to give you some valuable insight and share the biggest Sculptra mistakes that I've seen or I know of. And just to be clear, I am not currently sponsored or paid by any pharmaceutical company, including the one that manufactures Sculptra, so I have no disclosures to make. Sculptra mistake number 1, not getting enough Sculptra. Sculptra is not usually a one and done kind of treatment, and the results are not instant like filler. The amount of treatments and vials you get is usually dependent on how much volume loss you have, and how much volume loss you have is usually related to your age and your skin tissue thickness. I can look at someone and guess how many vials a person would need based on their skin tissue thickness and their age, but everyone responds differently to Sculptra. So if you don't follow up with your provider to look at your results may go unnoticed because the onset of action with Sculptra is very gradual and it's very natural looking. So it's really important for you to follow up and make a plan with your provider. Otherwise, you may end up being undertreated and thinking Sculptra didn't work. And it's really important for this to be explained to you on how Sculptra works differently than fillers. You have to wait on your results. And this is why I describe it as a Sculptra journey. And while it doesn't give you immediate results like filler, I like the fact that it gives you something to look forward to as opposed to a filler in which your results gradually go away.
Sculptra mistake number 2, not taking the proper length of time in between each treatment session.
People ask me the $1 million question. Can you overdo it with Sculptra and have unnatural looking results? Sculptra restores your skin structure and causes your skin to produce its own collagen. So the results are natural looking. And people sometimes put Sculptra into the category of filler or refer to it as a filler, but it works very differently. And filler, unfortunately, has gotten a bit of a bad reputation for making people look unnatural because for years, people have gone overboard with filler and overdoing it with their lips, their cheeks. So filler gets blamed for this, but it's not necessarily the product's fault. You can get filler and it look completely 100% natural. People are also realizing that filler can last a lot longer than they thought it used to. So unfortunately, filler has gotten a lot of negative bias. And this is why there's a small trend that I see happening with more and more people becoming interested in getting Sculptra. But they're also afraid of overdoing it with Sculptra. And while I personally have never seen an unnatural looking result from Sculptra, I have, however, had a few comments on my channel from people saying that they got Sculptra and they felt it made their cheeks look too full for their liking, or it took away definition from their face. So why might this happen? I've done virtual consults in which a few patients consulted with me because they were questioning the frequency and the management of their Sculptra treatment. They said they did 3 or 4 vials of Sculptra 4 weeks apart, so their provider just kept treating them every 4 weeks. And while there's nothing necessarily wrong with treating someone every 4 weeks for the first few sessions, at some point it's important to wait until your full results take effect because when your collagen gets stimulated, it'll thicken your skin. And I describe it as a sort of blending everything back together. And this can take some of the definition away, which is why it's great for people whose faces have lost that youthful softness and for those whose faces are gone. The one case that I've ever heard of in which a provider that I know actually saw someone in person who overdid it with Sculptra, that person was again treated every 4 weeks and their provider just kept going without allowing enough time to assess their full results, which usually takes around 3 months to see. When I'm deciding how frequently someone should get treated, I take into account their age, their skin tissue thickness, and their individual facial features because some people like to see a certain amount of definition in their face. And I've had patients say, I like that chic heroine look. So maybe we only do 1 or 2 vials and then we wait until the full 3 months and look at their before and after photos and then determine if they need further treatment.
This patient is an example of someone who you'd want to be more conservative with in treating and waiting for her full results to take effect before continuing treatment. She naturally has a lot of fullness to the anterior region of her cheeks and her under eyes. She has a small eye shape, so we wouldn't want her to lose too much definition. She actually reminds me a lot of Cate Blanchett. They both have similar eye shapes and cheeks. This is her 3 months after only 2 vials, and she and I were very happy with her results.
So it's important for you at some point to wait until your full results become apparent and look at your results before deciding to do more. And if you want to learn more about how I space my treatments for Sculptra, be sure to check this video out. And this brings us to Sculptra mistake number 3, not looking at your before and after photos. The key to your Sculptra journey, your Sculptra dosing, your Sculptra spacing of treatments, and how you're responding to Sculptra all lie in your before and after photos. Pictures are absolutely essential in every single case if you're getting treated. It's important that your provider not only take before and after photos, but they should be looking at your results and your progress. This is how you base if you're going to need more treatments, how well you're responding to treatments, and how many vials you should be doing during each treatment session. So your provider should be having you come in to look at your before and after photos at some point of your Sculptra journey. And that brings us to Sculptra mistake number 4, which is
not going to the right provider who's very experienced with Sculptra.
Administering Sculptra is totally different from filler. And if I were choosing a provider to do my Sculptra, I would make sure that the person has a lot of experience with it. Just because someone offers Sculptra or it's on a provider or practice's menu of services doesn't mean that person has extensive experience with it. I would also look at their before and after photos of patients that they have personally treated. Their before and after photos can be on their website or their Instagram or TikTok, but their before and after photos should be somewhere. Also beware of going to a provider or practice in which the price of Sculptra is low. Sculptra is a prescription drug product that's manufactured by a pharmaceutical company. So you want to make sure you're going to someone who doesn't cut corners and purchases product from anyone other than the manufacturer. There is a big issue with counterfeit injectable products, and there's currently a large federal investigation going on. There was a letter sent by the FDA recently about counterfeit Botox, and there have also been reported cases of counterfeit Sculptra. Just recently, 3 people were arrested and accused of practicing without a license and injecting illegal substances into people. Just last week, a man was accused of injecting an unknown substance into people's buttocks from April of 2020 until February of 2024. One woman was so sick she was hospitalized for several days. He led people to believe he was injecting them with a collagen stimulator, and he was arrested at his office called Skinny Sculpt in Pasadena, California, and they seized other counterfeit products imported from China labeled as Botox. And that investigation led police to a mother and daughter who were also arrested. The mother and daughter were practicing for over a decade, traveling to different parts of the country, charging anywhere between $6,000 to $8,000 for butt injections. Labs are still trying to determine what the victims were injected with. I get hit up via email or on Instagram all the time by companies reaching out to me asking if I want to purchase PLLA collagen stimulators from them. This would be illegal, but they don't care. And I know if I'm getting these messages, other providers are also getting these messages. FDA approved injectable products are expensive. It takes millions of dollars to get a drug approved here in the US. You cannot cut corners by purchasing from non-legitimate manufacturers. Also, the price of treatment for Sculptra is not only based on the cost of the product itself, but the time from your provider to administer it and manage your treatments. This involves a considerable amount of time on our part in not just administering the product, but in taking pictures or video of each and every patient we treat. Just the other day alone, it took me 20 minutes of my time to photograph and gather all the before and after pictures and video that we had taken to compare results. I also think it's smart to seek out providers who educate through social media platforms, because when you watch their educational content, it allows you to assess their knowledge, their expertise, as well as how Sculptra works, how long it lasts, the differences between Sculptra versus other treatments. And this adds so much value to you because it can give you a more comprehensive understanding of the treatment and whether or not you're a good candidate for it. We all know that when you get seen for a treatment in office, there are time constraints, and your provider will never be able to provide you with as much knowledge on Sculptra in comparison to the education that you can get from providers who are educating online. And access to that insightful information can be watched anytime and at your convenience.
Sculptra mistake number 5. Getting Sculptra when you're on Ozempic or any other semaglutide drug, getting Sculptra if you smoke or get excessive sun exposure.
I attend aesthetic conferences every year, and this year we had a very interesting presentation from a plastic surgeon who is well known for doing BBLs, or Brazilian butt lifts. This is a surgical procedure in which they take fat from one part of the body and place it into your butt and thighs to add volume and shape the body. This plastic surgeon was also very well known for doing butt lifts with Sculptra. The thing about adding volume to your butt with Sculptra, which was mentioned in another video, is that it takes a considerable amount of vials. And in a lot of cases, that could end up costing you more to get Sculptra than it would be if you got a BBL. And when I say a lot of vials, he's done up to 300 vials of Sculptra, 3 different sessions for one of his patients who did not want to have any more surgery. A lot of his clients didn't want to have BBLs because it's more dangerous and it comes with a big recovery. And also, he has done butt lifts with Sculptra on a few supermodels, and they don't want the downtime, and because they're lean, they don't have anywhere to take fat from. He shared his story about how he would treat some patients with Sculptra or even radiofrequency devices, and these specific patients just weren't responding, and he couldn't figure out why. And then he realized that it's likely linked to them taking semaglutides. People who take Ozempic or any other drugs like it usually lose weight rapidly, and they're in such a catabolic state, and that's likely why those select patients were not responding to Sculptra. So he advises that if you're on a semaglutide, and there are a lot of people on these medications, by the way, that you wait at least 6 weeks until you get off of them. Treatments like Sculptra are costly, so you want to make sure that if you get these treatments, that you're going to have the best response you possibly can. The same goes for smoking and excessive sun exposure. I had a patient that I treated with 4 sessions of Sculptra to her knees, and I knew she tanned at tanning salons every week. But before we began her treatment, I insisted that she stop tanning because excessive exposure to UV radiation degrades your collagen and elastin. When I treat you with Sculptra, I'm trying to build your collagen. So why would I want you to work against what I'm trying to do? She ended up having really good results. The same thing goes for smoking. It affects your synthesis of collagen, and it's probably okay if you socially smoke every once in a while, but if you're someone who smokes every day, that can definitely affect your response to Sculptra. But don't forget to check these videos out so you can learn more about Sculptra.